The Tuesday morning is a great text in St. Matthew. You have to appreciate being on a boat in a bad situation to get the full gist of this thing. He said, Jesus got into a boat. As Jesus got into a boat, his disciples followed him. Suddenly, a violent storm came up on the sea, so that the boat was being swamped by waves. But he was asleep. They came and woke him, saying, Lord, save us, we're perishing. He said, why are you terrified, O you of little faith? And he got up, rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. The men were amazed and said, what sort of man is this, whom even the winds and the sea obey? You know, it's an analogy. What he's describing is the life of the church, of course. He's getting his brains knocked out during Matthew's times, and it's turbulent. He said, don't worry, I'm with you. Okay? That's what this story's about. But to get the full force of it, I think, is to follow the analogy, the story. Okay, the analogous part of the story. You have to know what it's like to be in a boat and get caught in the storm. This is really true. You feel a creaturely helplessness. You know what it is to be a creature, because you know how. There's a friend of mine had this on his boat. Pete Ferriol had it on his boat. It was a little off. I could only find it. It said, oh God, how big is your ocean? How small is my boat? How big is your ocean? How small is my boat? And you get that feeling. As much as you got all the technologies in the world, especially now with the motors, and you got GPS, not GPS, but electronics, you got built-in compasses, all that stuff. Still, the ocean has a mind of its own. You know that you are a mere, you're just a bob in the water. And when she gets, especially on the ocean, although I saw it on the Great Lakes too. Great Lakes comparable, especially Lake Erie, rough as hell, rough water. But I remember it so much with the ocean and the Sound, Long Island Sound and the ocean, because it's so vast and powerful. It's a great symbol of life. It's both life-giving and life-threatening. Okay? One thing you know is you're a creature. When you're out on the ocean, you know you're a creature. Oh God, how big is your ocean? How small is my boat? And that is really true. I remember one time we were at Shelter Island, my classmates and I. We used to go there every summer. Shelter Island's at the tip of Long Island. Only Montauk, the island of Montauk is between you and Spain, okay? And we used to cut out and go out. We'd go past Montauk. We were crazy. We had a 20 horsepower motor. You might as well think we had a rocket. Okay, anyway, we went. I remember there was 4 of us in the boat, which again was stupid. It was only an 18-foot boat. We had 4 guys in it. We would go fishing, okay? But we would take chances. Anyway, we went out. And we got into the weather really crapped up, and we got into a fog, and we had to come in. And the only thing we could see was the sun. The fog was so thick, but the sun could break through it, and it was a setting sun. So we knew we had to go west, okay? If you went east, you end up in Spain, okay? So we knew we had to go west. I remember that. I hope I'm not exaggerating, but it was a moment of very great quiet and silence and prayer because we were scared. And we came in, and the 2 things we did was keep the bow under the sun, keep it on under the setting sun, because then you're heading west. You're going to finally get to Shelter Island, okay? Which we did, okay, obviously. But we listened to the engine too. That engine failed us. We were in real trouble. And though it was foggy, the water was rough. You don't usually see that, I don't think, anyway. We were getting hit from the side. We were getting hit from waves, just what he described. And it was typical for the guys in the outfit, typical of the monks. We started with the rosary. Then we got very quiet. After the rosary, and it was a good half-hour ride in or more. It was quiet. What we listened to was the engine. The engine. And it kept the bow under the sun. We knew if follow it west, go west. See? You feel how human you are, how much of a creature you are. See? And that's the story here. That's the analogy. You know that this thing is bigger than you are, much bigger. And therefore it requires that you respect the enormity of it. My father taught us that as kids growing up. Don't fear the water, respect it. You guys, you hear that in the wilderness. Don't be afraid of the wilderness, but to respect it. There's a saying in Alaska, if you disrespect and don't respect the wilderness will not forgive you. That is true of the ocean as well. This is absolutely true of the ocean as well, because you do not respect her power and her beauty, but her power. When you respect it, it means you honor it. You don't thwart your will upon it. You don't impose your will upon the ocean. You respond to the ocean wisely. One of the key things you do is watch the sky. You see clouds. You see a storm coming. You know to get out of there. You don't flaunt it because it's bigger than you are. And I think that's the story here, what was intended here. The church was skanking and shellacking at that time, the early church. And it was a boat really turbulently rocking in the ocean of life itself, the community life, the life where they were living, Jerusalem. Martyrdom was a routine. And I think what our Lord is saying here in this great story, trust me, I'm with you. Trust me. This storm will not prevail. You will not drown. The church will not fail. And I think that is historically true. Sometimes the church does best when she's rocking and rolling in the ocean, when she's not comfortable in the sea, but when she has to really trust because she's getting buffeted all over the place by wind and waves, when she can't have the arrogance of self-conceit, but recognizes that without Christ, she goes under. I mean that too. I think the best thing for the church is to be discomfortable, to be uncomfortable in the world, to be uncomfortable, to be looking at the sky, testing the wind, and recognizing that this is a turbulent storm, and that we must trust Christ in the storm, and the church will not only be safe, it'll get us to the other side. It's not a case of mere safety. She will flourish. She will flourish. When does the church flourish the best? When it's martyred, with martyrdom. The blood of the martyrs, okay, is what builds the church. When heroic faith, which is heroic trust in God, when things are especially bad, that's her most powerful moment. When she's comfortable, she corrupts. Thank you, Amos. When she's comfortable, when she compromises. I think of the Renaissance. The corruption of the church was a time when the church was most powerful. She governed the culture, she governed the land, and she corrupted. She sold out. And I'm talking from the very top down, from the popes. You couldn't get greater corruption if you paid for it, and if you had Martin Scorsese write the plot. That's just the truth. It was not a good time in the life of the church. It was a despicable time. Thank God for the women of the church, because they saved it from itself. They saved it from the men. The corruption of the clergy, the corruption of the papacy and the episcopacy. Men of power, wealth, power. They were geniuses in terms of the arts. They're the guys that paid for Michelangelo to slap paint on the ceiling, okay? Genius, humanistic genius. Hardly Christian. Church does not flourish well when she is comfortable. She flourishes well when she has to live authentically with the gospel. And that means when she trusts Christ, the truth of the gospel, not the comforts of convenience and power and wealth. She's always better off when she's in mortal danger, when the church is buffeting back and forth in the high winds of culture and the big waves, the counterforces to the gospel itself, to the safety of the church, to the church herself. She's always better off because it's an honest church then. She's there trusting Christ and preaching Christ to the world. She is hearing the voce di Dio. She's hearing the voice of God, the voice of Christ, not the voice of power and wealth, prestige. The church is way better off when she's rocking and rolling in the ocean.